Marcos, why do you even like these?
What? Welcome to Hi-Fi. I'm Marcos, this is Kurt, and today we're going to be exploring why I'm into cassettes.
Okay.
What a snapper!
What I don't understand is, so what makes cassettes? Like, why do you really love it? For one thing is, I think you're probably too young when it first came out. So, I would really like to know what got you into this.
Hard to explain, it's a bit of a long story, but I just love everything about cassettes.
Yeah, one of the cool things I noticed when I picked up this is just the weight of it. I never really bought the fancy cassettes when I was young making mixtapes. Yeah, this one does have some heft to it, and that must be part of the reason of maybe why you like them.
Yeah, it's actually a really big part of why I collect cassettes is just the looks and feel of the cassette. Like the one you were just holding with a full metal body on it. It's got some really cool little wheels at the bottom to guide the tape itself. Same like this Sony Metal Master, the only tape that was fully ceramic shelled. So it's really fun to like collect all these rare tapes that have all these really cool materials. You could tell Sony TDK were really trying to push the limits of what they could do.
And for one thing, I still always remember is when I is taking that same cassette that I would have in a little Sansui cassette player, take that tape, move it into my Walkman, or into my parents' car. Even fast forward a few years later, when I got my first car, I solely relied just on tape. I don't know, that clanging of the tapes and putting them inside the thing, I don't know, it's just, right, there's something just so tangible about it.
The other thing, what's not to love about just dropping the tape in the player, closing that door, and pressing play. Like, it's so mechanical, it's so fun to do it. I also just love watching the tape counter just clicking along. It's just a really fun visual experience.
One thing that was a big thing for me when recording was trying to maximize the best recording, but not only that, the ability to make mixtapes and record.
You know what's funny about the mixtapes is that's basically what I grew up listening to, was just a whole bunch of different mixtapes. And maybe your more than average amount of Eurobeat mixtapes. But even to this day, I love making a really cool mixtape. Yeah, I'll use some pretty high-end equipment to see how good can I make a tape sound. But it's super fun making a mixtape, and then, you know, I also make the J cards. Just sharing them with your friends is a good time.
One thing I always remember recording is actually going to the London Drugs at that time, because I think that was the closest place to my parents. I would try to afford the best one at the time. I think the best one they carried was that, I was telling you before, that TDK, the gold or whatever it was, that came in that little slimline packet. And yeah, I'll never forget grabbing that cassette, going back home because I wanted to record my favorite artist on the radio, and literally waiting there and almost like falling asleep, just waiting for it to come on. And I would be so upset because I would either miss 2 or 3 seconds of it or something like that. But yeah, you know what? That experience was amazing. I'll never forget that.
More memorable parts about the cassettes for me as well is just the sound of the cassette. It's kind of like vinyl. There's a good reason why vinyl is making such a resurgence with the physicality, the sound of it. Cassette is very much the same, right? You get to admire the cassette. You get to play with this nice mechanical machine. And also, they all have their own sound. A lot of people say it has like this hiss to it, weird magnetic sounds. It definitely adds to the experience of listening to a cassette.
Yeah, so for me, sound, of course, that was always difficult. But I do understand how you mean, because I think even every cassette has its own character in terms of sound quality, and that's why they're built the way that they're built. But holding this in my hand, like I said, I don't know as much as you do about Walkmans, but this from what I heard, was one of the best sounding Walkmans that were around. Yeah. So just briefly tell me about this, and one thing is if anybody wants to hear more about like maybe individual stuff for a Walkman, let us know in the comments below, and maybe we'll do more in-depth videos. So what made this one so famous? And isn't this worth like $4,000 or $3,000 or something?
It is worth a pretty incredible amount of money for a Walkman.
Yeah, see, I'm scared now.
But yeah, this is the Sony WM-DD9. What made it famous more than anything is when it was released by Sony in 1989, they really put all their best engineers onto designing this particular Walkman. It was the top level of the DD series, which was definitely Sony's like pinnacle series. With a DD9, they really went all out with a full metal body. Even on the inside, I've taken it apart, and it's just incredible how much tech they packed into this little machine. With a dual motor drive as well, it was definitely one of the best, like timing wise. It was quartz locked, so it's definitely one of the best sounding. Right now it's a little bit under restoration once again, so I've replaced quite a few bits and bobs on it, but there's no hinge on it, so it's a little bit finicky at the moment. But it's definitely the pinnacle of my cassette collection.
One thing that I can really see, and I know you're a big music collector, is I guess the collectability of it.
With cassette collecting, for me, it's part of like the thrill of the hunt, is finding these hard to find hi-fi tapes and some really like niche artists such as Blank Banshee here. This is his debut album on a cassette, which was actually pretty hard to find at the time. You do find some pretty niche artists still releasing their albums to this day on cassette, which is pretty cool. Especially since you can buy, instead of buying like an LP for $40, $50, you can buy their album on cassette for like $10.
Actually, that brings up another good point. The barrier of entry. I know it can go from really high to really low in terms of buying, say, just a blank cassette. But you know more about this stuff, so tell me some of the costs of these cassettes and stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Of course, the ones we've got on display here are definitely the top of the market in terms of collectability. Even opened, some like this one is around $150. The Sony Metal Masters are around the same. Sealed, they definitely skyrocket in value because they are starting to get quite rare, such as like this Teak Cobalt, which last time I've seen one up for sale, I don't know if it's sold for that, was around $400.
That's crazy.
Which I'm glad I didn't pay that. The nice part is the barrier to entry is pretty low because you can buy your more common cassettes for 50 cents each. You know, your local used stores, your, value villages, whatnot, you can always find some there. The nice part is you can re-record them. So if you want to make a mixtape for your friend, you can just record over all the old music and have something cool, right? That's fun to listen to.
And so hardware-wise, like price from cassettes. So I think in terms of cassettes, what price-wise, like what say a Walkman would range?
Yeah. Luckily, some Walkmans are worth a little bit more than others, such as this DD9 is very rare, very collectible, so of course it's going to command a collector's premium, around like $2,000, $3,000 or more dollars for one of those. But the nice part is I brought this one in, this old sports Walkman. Those are like the workhorse Walkmans. They're not as collectible, and your barrier to entry is much lower. You can buy one that works for around $50. That really gets you up and going. The cool part about this one too is the fact that it has 2 headphone jacks, so you can kind of share it with friends. It's also waterproof. It's a pretty tough little machine that you don't have to be overly worried about breaking.
And then price-wise, between cassette decks.
Yeah, the cassette decks, same thing.
I heard there's some new ones that came out too.
There's some new ones. Buying an old vintage one like mine here, which was rebuilt by a local store. This one rebuilt is around $400, so not too expensive. You can buy them like a more inexpensive one around $100, and usually they work quite well.
And you're probably gonna buy this one with John, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one's gonna get some fun mods and whatnot, but the reason why I love this one, it's kind of like an old workhorse Sony cassette deck. Very mechanical and very simplistic inside. So you're not getting a lot of features, but you're just getting some good durability.
I think you have me convinced. But thank you for reminiscing with us, and see you in the next one.